Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora Chewy.
Good evening, Pat.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Yeah, not too bad.
You recovered from Friday night? Big night?
Yes. I had a very social weekend, actually, which is unusual for me lately. I was at your place and then had another mate's birthday on Saturday. And so I've been making up for it by sleeping on the couch. Been good.
Nice. I actually am recovering from the weekend as well. I actually had a sleep this afternoon. I had, for people who don't know, or most of you know who are watching, it was a bit of a blowout on Friday night for my birthday because my birthday got cancelled a month earlier because of the passing of Dad. So we had a bit of a crack last Friday night. And it was fun, eh? It was much smaller than it would have been. It was a big party, but we all fitted around my ridiculously large table and just sat there for maybe 3 hours and drank and ate and spit shit for a while. It was good fun.
Yeah, it was a good feed, good crew. Yeah, it was nice.
Right, lots to talk about tonight. Obviously, there's a couple of big announcements, politically speaking. One being the rehashing of the roads of national importance, which we'll get to. Don't you? Not yet, Drew. Hold it. Keep your powder, brother. Keep your powder. Keep it dry. Keep it dry. And also the Labour list, we're going to have a look at that as well as we go through the evening. We're going to start tonight's show. I apologise about my camera. My camera's playing up tonight. It's going to come back and be all wide like that. Hi, guys. This is me in the TARDIS.
All far away.
He's
not very small.
No.
He's just far away.
We might, I might just leave it like this. It might just be easier because it's done it 3 times since we've been here in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We're also going to talk to Rev Scottie Reeve. Made world famous all over the internet last week by being removed from a Julian Batchelor meeting. So we'll talk to Scotty in a minute. He's in the waiting room waiting for us right now. But before we do that, I want to say a couple of things super quick. The first is people who have ordered July merch. I found out how difficult it is to book a fucking courier over the weekend. I left my house in North Dunedin and I went to get packaging from South Dunedin and I stopped at Aramax, New Zealand Couriers. There's another one like on New Zealand Post, I think Fastway, all the way through on Friday. And all of them said, we can't give you a price for delivery. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that has to be done through the email or our website. So I'm getting prices back today, tomorrow. They should be in the post by tomorrow afternoon. I'm sorry they're a bit later than I thought, but if you've ordered merch with us in the last couple of weeks, it should be to you by the end of this week. I apologize, but it's the one thing that, and I'll tell you something, you guys who bought stuff off us last month, you got a pretty bloody good deal because I also wasn't quite aware how much the courier would cost, seeing I decided to include it in the price. So, Chewy, you know how we were going to work out some money and stuff from these sales? I'll give you your $8 at some stage, and I'll keep my $8, and we'll go from there. So, a good deal for you guys last month. It was fun, but the pricing might be a bit different this month for our BHN stuff. But also, speaking of that, our beautiful patrons who we love to bits, thank you for being a part of what we do. And thank you. There's our wall of fame, or maybe a wall of shame, depending on what side of the politics you sit on, the political world you sit on. For the people who come on board and are our patrons and help us do what we do. If you're interested in being involved, as it says at the bottom of the screen, help us keep making independent news by visiting patreon.com/big hairy ass. No, big hairy news technically is what it is. But that is what I feel so strange in this setup. I feel like you can see you know how I always talk about my 50-inch screen? There it is. You see it's right beside me right there. It just feels very, very bizarre. Okay, let us, should we just get into it? Should we just do that? Should we just get into it, Chewy?
Yes.
Is anything you want to waste 20 minutes on with a tangent before we get going, or should we just get into it?
No, I put my shirt idea in the chat. It should be BHN shirt of national importance.
BHN shirt of national importance. Okay, well those will be this time around. It'll be a BHN OB shirts this time, and the original beardies. That'll be the shirts this year, and we'll get to those probably in a couple of weeks from now. Because tomorrow, check this out, right? I don't want to freak you out too much, but tomorrow we begin the 8th month of the year, tomorrow. And I believe it's 75 days till the election. So it's 10 weeks. Yeah, 10 weeks and 5 days. So you are being informed right now.
Okay.
Right. Give me a sec. Maybe I'll do this. Hang on. Maybe I should do this. Will this be better? You tell me, Chewy. Is that better at all? Or is it better or is it worse for this ridiculously long shot?
I think it's very much the same, Pat.
Okay. I'll do that anyway. All right. So let's welcome to this very, very professional show, Reverend Scottie Reeve, who we all know from last week's shows, but we've never met him on purpose. On purpose? Never met him on purpose? In person. G'day, Scottie.
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui.
How are you, man?
How you doing, mate?
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Hey,
Nice to be with you guys.
Before we start, and I always like to figure this out, Reverend Scottie, Very Reverend Scottie, Minister Scottie, what's your official title and what does it go by and what does that all mean?
Just titles I almost never use, but yes, Reverend, which just means I'm ordained. I'm a priest in the Anglican Church in the Diocese of Wellington.
All right. So here's what we're going to do, dudes, is we're going to start by having a look at a clip that you made. It came to light last week. When did you actually make this clip, Scottie?
It might have been... it was a Monday night, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So probably because last weekend, I think, was the Manawatu meeting. This was perhaps the weekend before. So it was the line of meetings that we go through. Okay, let's have a look at this. And then we want to have a talk about it and have a chat with you about your experiences. All good?
Yep.
I know we've all seen this before, but let's start the conversation looking at why we're talking to you.
Hey mate. Hey, do you understand what he's kind of just said?
Yep, I do. Yep. I'm a local Anglican priest. I have concerns for my neighbourhood, and so I'm here to hear what's going to be said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. You understand that you've been trespassing here by then?
Sure. Do I need to? Can they give me a piece of paper or something?
It can be delivered verbally.
Yeah.
Or
right.
Or by kind of
Okay.
notice.
Yeah.
So they're doing it verbally,
Right.
something like this.
Okay.
So we're going to ask you verbally to leave.
Right.
That trespass that they're kind of
Sure.
put into effect there. So it would be good if you could just kind of vacate yourselves.
Sure.
And we'll just kind of follow you out.
Sure. So can you just explain to me my rights around that?
What I'll do is I'll get my boss to come in and chat to you, okay? I'm sure I'll be happy to.
Yeah. I know you're just doing your job, and I'm just doing mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Just hang here.
Just the Anglican priest.
Troublemakers, Anglican priest, those troublemakers.
Sorry? Well, people might wonder what you're up to if you're kicking the local priest out of a room. Oh, I don't know about that. Seems like the biggest crowd's outside.
Best line of the whole thing.
It's a private meeting. So you're actually trespassing and you weren't on the list and you told us you were, so you're lying as an Anglican priest.
Uh-oh.
Not very good testimony, my friend.
Uh-oh.
There's just when he's talking about lying, there's nothing true in this trash that he's putting out here.
Nothing justifies lying.
Well, then why are you lying in here, Julian? Why are you lying in here? Why are you lying in this? You accuse me of lying, and there's nothing but lies in this book that you're putting here.
What would Jesus think of you, my friend?
I don't know, what would Jesus think of you when he said to welcome the stranger and the foreigner and the Samaritan?
Not into an uninvited guest into a private meeting.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? What do you think Jesus did with uninvited guests?
He would say,
What did he do with uninvited guests? What did Jesus do with uninvited
the
guests?
Pharisees and the Sadducees, he got rid of them.
He got rid of them. And so you calling me a Pharisee and a Sadducee?
Cast them out.
I'm a Pharisee and a Sadducee, am
That's what
I?
I would say almost.
Right, okay,
You're not telling the truth. You didn't tell us the truth when you came in here.
Right.
Right. I'm glad you admit it. Thanks. That's all we need.
All right, and then basically, slowly but surely, you are removed from the meeting from the police, and you leave very, very quietly, Scottie. No whistle blowing, no feces throwing, nothing like that, which I think Chewy's a bit disappointed about. but onwards you go. So tell us why. Why did you go to this meeting? Why did you feel the need to, I guess, make a stand? I mean, like, I'm also interested as to how they identified you, because you're obviously in the meeting sitting down. So you obviously got through security, I suspect because of your skin color, personally. But you're obviously sitting in there. How did that all happen, and why did you go?
Yes, I found out at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon on the day it was happening, that it was happening, and I knew the people who had invited him. So I got in touch with them and said about kind of encouraging them. I said, listen, Poniki anti-fascists have got this on all their social media channels. It's not going to go the way you think it will. Because in the end, like, my concern, they couldn't find venues in Wellington. They found this little hall in Brooklyn, which is the suburb I'm a minister in, and I felt really concerned for the neighbourhood. And so for me, it's like really the goal was not to have an encounter like there was in the end. It was stop the thing. But they were pretty evasive, the people running it. And so I said, well, I'm going to call the police and let them know what's happening. I turned up early, met the police, which is why I wasn't really worried about them coming to get me, because we were already on pretty good terms. And I went and met the protesters too, and from anti-fascists, and I said, hey, I'm actually with you guys, but I'm going to wait down the road just so I don't look like I'm with you guys, and maybe I can get in. They said, yep, we get it. And then, deliberately, I very rarely wear my priest collar, but I put it on that night because I thought it might help. And I saw a guy from some of the Christians who were involved running it pull up with his car, and it was full of chairs he was carrying. And so I just rocked up to him and said, hey, mate, can I help carry in a few chairs with you? And he said, oh, that would be awesome. Are you coming to the meeting? I said, yep. So it was you had to have your name on the door, but I just carried in these chairs, and for about 5 or 10 minutes just laid out chairs in the auditorium. And then I just took a seat at the back and quietly minded my business there. And the plan was to wait a few minutes after it got going and to just stand up and sing Waiata until I was removed. But Julian Batchelor realised that I was not on the guest list. And so... How
did he realise that?
Oh, they started checking everyone who was in the room because it hadn't sort of officially begun yet. And they came over to me and they said, oh, are you on the list? I said, I helped set up, which was true. And then it sort of got more and more heated. And I said, well, I'm not leaving. And I turned on my camera at that point because of how it had gone violent other places, and thought it was worth having... I had some advice from an activist friend, just said probably a good moment to turn on your camera. They were sort of giving me audibles.
So hang on. I want clarity so we're really clear. When you say violence, you're talking about you turned on your camera in case you were the victim of violence by the people in the hall. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and to be clear, there was nothing in the end that was going that way. But that
was your concern.
And I'd seen how it had gone. And we know from watching what happened in Palmy last week, we know how these things can go. And so I turned on my camera just to be clear about what was happening. And I said, listen, I'm not leaving, but you can get the police if you want to. Police came in, and I just bought a little bit more time by asking for them to get me a more formal document on my rights. And then the big boss came in, who I'd actually met beforehand, and he just quietly says to me at the end, he said, basically, please don't make us kind of drag you out of here. And I was like, yep, I actually don't want to, didn't actually want to make the job difficult.
For sure. You said you were concerned for the community, concerned for the neighbourhood. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Were you concerned at the messaging coming out of the hall? Were you concerned that it might evolve into violence inside and outside the hall? Where was that concern being laid?
I would say my primary concern is as someone of faith, knowing that other people of faith were organising the meeting, that I thought it was important for someone to be seen there who was a person of faith but was standing on the opposite side of the discussion.
Right.
And so that's where I'd never normally wear a shirt and a collar, but I put it on because and what that resulted in, as I turn up and some of the Poniki anti-fascists are having to go at me because they assume I'm with the crew.
For sure.
But that's the same reason that I got let in. yeah, I just thought it was really important, as I said to Julian, that very little of what they're doing, or nothing of what they're doing, represents anything of the Jesus I understand, and so wanted to embody that, and I just think civil disobedience is like a really important part of the tradition in my faith here in Aotearoa, from the Springbok tour to Pari Haka with Te Whiti and Orongamai and Tohu, and I think that's an important part of our history, an important part of my whakapapa as an Anglican priest.
Chewy, you know me, Chewy. I'll just talk this whole time, so you jump in with sir.
I am interested. Obviously, when you heard that this was going down and you knew people that were involved in the organisation of it, how did that conversation go?
To begin with, there was a real caginess about why I was calling. I initially wanted to get in touch with the person who had hired the venue to them, but they wouldn't let me have the contact of that person. So I ended up, they were saying, oh, we'll send you the contact, and then it didn't come, and I'd call back, didn't come. And so I eventually called them back and I said, hey, full discretion, I think like things could go violent tonight. I'm worried about where this is heading. And I don't think you guys realise what you're in for here. At that point, they were really shocked that people actually knew about it, because they tried to keep it really stealthy.
What do you think that is? Like, I mean, I always think about like a message. If you've got the message that that everyone needs to hear, what's the necessity of keeping it secret?
Well, I think the thing is, in the end, I don't actually think this is about. I don't think this is about faith or religion at all. I think that's the banner that Julian kind of likes to walk under. But the feeling of it, I mean, I walked into the room, and within 2 minutes, I heard two women in the room openly commenting on how if you let Muslims into the country, they ruin a society, So it was like, it was a full-on environment. Obviously those people felt safe to have that conversation there.
Yeah.
Felt like this was a room where they could just say that loudly and nobody would be offended by that. It struck me as feeling very similar to the first day of the occupation of Parliament lawns last year, where I walked through and I saw Trump flags, Tino Rangatiratanga flags, Russian flags, US flags, and none of it had any business being together. It was just a gathering of the disenfranchised. And so, on Parliament lawn, you had like Māori who are legitimately disempowered and disenfranchised, and then you have white supremacists, Pākehā misogynists, who feel like they've lost something over the last few years, and they all find this kind of common ground of feeling hard done by, some of them really legitimately and some of them not legitimately at all. And I think Julian Batchelor's gatherings are a similar one of those kinds of things.
It's selling the idea that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what they're trying to push out there.
It's really handy, isn't it, to say that God's on your side when you're saying something awful.
Chewy's been laughing every time we've talked about this at Julian Batchelor's book that he's selling, the pamphlet book. I haven't seen it, but you held it up to camera and you said this is full of lies. Because I haven't seen it, what are the lies that are in it?
He misrepresents Te Tiriti like really egregiously, and the main people that he quotes from in that, or the main footnotes that you find in there, if you look through them, they're like 9/11 conspiracy theorists. It's deeply bound up in the kind of conspiracy theory thing there. So some of the people who had been had invited him along to that event, I know, are COVID conspiracists. So it really is, it's within that whole ballpark of stuff. So he hinges his whole idea of what Te Tiriti actually says around this idea of the Littlewood document, which was like an early draft of the treaty, and then he just plays really fast and loose with his translation of that. But the thing is that everyone in the room is just up for it, and anyone who shows any kind of dissent is removed.
It's always a sign of a strong message that if someone disagrees with you, the way you deal with them is to exit them from the room. It's always a sign of, I've got a good handle on this message, and it's good for people to hear, isn't it?
Well, I mean, and that's the other thing. Like, I had literally done nothing aside from help to put out chairs at the point I was removed. So there's a certain level, and that's where I sort of said to them, it's a strange thing when you're throwing the local Anglican priest out of the room, because you've like couldn't. I'm not a threatening guy, and to be honest, like some of the conversations I had with Poneke anti-fascists is that we don't we would agree on some of the things, but we don't agree in practice. So I was not someone outside yelling "Go home, racists," So there's a kind of, for me, there's a really important value of non-violence, both in our language and in our actions. So I was completely non-violent and non-confrontational in the way that I approached it, but was then removed.
I wanted to ask you about your employer. But I don't want to be all cheesy and say God, because priest, But obviously, you come under people in your parish, in your diocese, however that works.
Yes.
What does your boss think about sort of you making noises in this area? Like, obviously, your clip has become, I don't know whether you'd call it viral, but lots of people have seen it. How do your bosses feel about you putting this message out there and fighting this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky in the Anglican Diocese of Wellington. Our bishop, Bishop Justin, has a really strong history of advocacy and activism. And this is not kind of the first thing I've been along to. So we're kind of connected in with the Waihopai Three as well, who did the piercing of the domes down south.
Yep. I actually know 80 quite well, so I know exactly.
80, yeah. So they're Catholic workers. But there's a whole crew of us who have kind of been participating in different kinds of activism for a long time now. I mean, one of the first things Bishop Justin did when he became bishop was he had a prison cell put on the steps of the cathedral, which he lived out of for 7 days to draw attention to the huge rates of incarceration we have in New Zealand, And Judith Collins actually said he made her ashamed to be an Anglican. So I feel like that's a win.
Wow. I've got a couple of things I want to play, Chewy. Anything you want to jump in there for, including if any of the comments in the chat you want to put out there?
Yeah, we've got a few comments just from our listeners, watchers today. It's awesome to see a person of faith standing up against the far right who have somehow commandeered religion, or I guess weaponized it in a lot of ways. This echoes my thoughts very well. I'm not churchy, but big respect for the Rev for making a stand. Paul says I'm down with any Christian who does what Jesus would do. And Free Soul has mentioned here that Julian is now going to do online meetings only. His first was yesterday. There were more against him than for, and yet today he crowed it was a success. So there we go.
I have to say, Scotty, and maybe you can echo this. You're like the professional Christian here. I mean, I've had a lot to do with the religious world and stuff, but everything I read about the central character of Jesus, he would run a mile from these meetings, and he probably would be, no one knows this, but he would probably be more likely to be standing with the people on the outside looking in rather than the inside looking out. That's exactly what I read, or used to read, about, what he thought of Pharisees inside temples and stuff. Would that be a fair, ill-informed kind of observation?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And then I think there's also something, there's something in this around, I think, how do we also then do reconciliation within all of that too. So one of the things I did at the end of last week is at the end of the week before, I reached out to the people who had run the event, to the pastors of that church, and I took them out for breakfast and kind of took them through some of the things that Julian's actually said over the last few years, and just said to them, guys, I just really want an assurance from you he's not coming back to your patch. And it turned out that they were actually really confronted by me being thrown out. Wow. And it was actually kind of a moment, a little bit of a wake up to them that this was not kind of just innocent right wing politics, but this was actually something different. And so I think there's a challenge, in like that. How do we enter into these spaces and stand up and put our bodies on the line where we need to, but then also believe that that people can change and give the opportunity for that transformation to happen in people, because I think our political environment is so polarized at the moment. It kind of needs both. It needs us to stand up courageously when we need to, but then it also needs us to be a bit courageous to sit down with people who will never see eye to eye with and go, hey, maybe actually there's a way through this. And there'll still be a heck of a lot that's different about us. They're deep in some conspiracy stuff, and I'm not, not excusing all of that. But in the end, I have to occupy the same neighborhood with these guys. And the more separate we are, the more entrenched we become in our views. And, and they're a Samoan couple who have their own history of oppression and marginalization as well, too. So there's stuff going on for them as well. So I think it was Saltz and I who said, the line of good and evil doesn't run down boundaries or nations, but down the center of every human heart. And it's just holding people's humanity in the middle of it and going, okay, well, like, what can we actually kind of, are there opportunities here where we can kind of, in the tradition of people like, Archbishop Desmond Tutu in South Africa, do that work of hard conversations to see if we actually can move the dial and depolarize our politics?
I feel like the biggest headline from this conversation, and from your experience, if you were if you were Julian Batchelor on the platform and I was Sean Plunkett, I'd be going, wait a minute. Did you just say, Scotty, that the people who put on the event were upset at how you were, well, that's his news, we'll follow this up, well, this is news, we'll follow this up. But, that's actually, to me, sort of the biggest, I'm sorry, I don't have the tone that nut bar has, but that's sort of the biggest story from this, is that the people who are involved, and I don't want to paraphrase badly, so correct me, the people who helped put on the event, maybe weren't that stoked how it turned out, especially for you by the end of the event. That's actually kind of a massive aspect of the story.
Well, and I think, I was thinking the other day how, sometimes I talk to Pākehā men these days who are kind of like, what's kind of, what's our role in society now? Everything's changing. There's this kind of, sense of disenfranchisement. What's our role? And I think, I was thinking, when an activist, kind of gets arrested or whatever, your average kind of Mike Hosking listener looks at that activist and thinks, oh, they're probably a criminal. They probably deserved it. There's something powerful begins to happen, and I think this been seen throughout different civil disobedience movements, that when the middle of society turns up and begins to get arrested or begins to get thrown out, that for some reason people start to take notice, because old Bill, who sits around his farm table in the Waikato, starts to think, shit, that guy looks like me. And so I think one of the things I think that would be really good at the moment is for just your average Pākehā bloke who is just as boring as anything to get out there and actually be a part of this, because I think that has a powerful way of awakening people who otherwise wouldn't be awoken in the conversation.
I've got two more little things I want to touch on, and the first is actually someone's mentioned that Batchelor was on the platform again today, and he was talking to the Crypt Keeper, which we'll get to in a second. But he was talking to the Crypt Keeper, and there was a part of it. The Crypt Keeper is from Tales of the Crypt. I'll show you who that is shortly. They were talking about the New Zealand Herald story today, where Hawke's Bay local Chris McCabe had been identified as the person screening attendees to weed out protesters seeking to attend the latest Hawke's Bay meeting of Julian Batchelor's Stop Co-Governance, and his associations with white supremacist, racist, Nazi groups is pretty well documented. And the thing that, look, nobody be scared here. You're about to see a very scary face. Don't be concerned. I'm just giving, this is a trigger warning for the Crypt Keeper. But I want to play you a little bit of a clip, because I didn't listen to the whole interview, to be frank. But one of the things that was most concerning to me was when the Crypt Keeper asked Julian Batchelor if he would continue to use Chris McCabe in future events. And this is what was said.
All right, now that you do know that...
although for being 173 years old, the Crypt Keeper looks okay, I guess that's fair.
You've probably read the whole story yourself. He joined the National Front in New Zealand in 2016. He's come up with a few of these thoughts as well. Your views as to whether or not his views are yours, or do you go and whether or not you'll continue to use them in Hawke's Bay or not?
Oh, I would still continue to use Chris, no problem, because he's not a racist. He believes that I had a chat with him this morning over the phone, about it. And I said to him, have you read what they've written about you? And some of it was twisted and contorted and not accurate. And he's not a racist. He's not a white supremacist. He's not a Nazi. He's a guy that actually believes in equality.
Enemy of my enemy.
Which is why he's helping me. So I couldn't see anything about, and some of the comments that were sort of, skewed by you get David Fisher onto something and it's always going to be given a really...
Anyway, that's pretty much enough of that. You get the idea is that, the outing of this character, Chris McCabe, has come as a part of the National Front and a white supremacist and what people refer to in 2023 as a Nazi. White supremacist is fine. And the response by this so-called man of God is, oh yeah, we'll keep using him. Yeah, I have no conflict with that. And the other thing I wanted to say before we wrap up is, because there will be people in the chat and there will be people tomorrow who will say this on this thing. It's like, why don't you give people a chance to respond? So I've been in touch with Julian Batchelor today, and I've offered on 3 different occasions to have a chat with him. There's nothing, I'm not revealing anything here. There's no phone numbers or anything. Don't panic. I'm not doxing or anything. The first message, I just said, do you want to come on? We want to come on. We've talked to Victoria Jacobs, yada, yada, yada. You can't see it here, but that was seen about 4 o'clock this afternoon. After he saw it, I wrote another one that said, any interest? We've got people asking for your side of the conversation. Didn't see anything. And then I said, we'll take your non-response as a no. All good. No one's entitled to your time. Just wanted to give you a chance to come and explain your position, but we can at least now say the offer has been extended. So nobody can now say, I don't care if they do, but they can't say that, well, why don't you get them on that we've offered? And just so people know that was actually, I have the right number.
Hi, it's Julian here. Please don't leave a message because I'm no longer dealing with voicemail. Just send me a text, please.
I bet.
So I did. So just so people know as well, there'll probably be some, as is always the case, Chewy, there'll be some people who are annoyed that I've reached out to Julian Batchelor to have a chat, but we did. And he's seen the messages and hasn't responded, so we'll take it as read. But 2 things there. Oh, well, I guess the only thing I wanted to show that to people to say that they know there's been an opportunity. But secondly, this idea about this white supremacist, this National Front member being outed, for want of a better word, and Julian Batchelor being like, yes, we'll keep using him. You guys are welcome to jump in on that, or anything else if you want to wrap up, Scotty.
I just want to highlight something in that image on that that Herald thing. So the person that we're talking about here is in the grey jacket with the red binder there. There's a fellow there wearing a balaclava and very obvious boots with red laces.
Yeah.
Now, in the skinhead community, that means something. Red laces traditionally mean that you have participated in a violent act in defense of the white race. So if they're talking about how, Chris isn't racist anymore, he's not in that life anymore, bullshit. I'm just calling it based on who he's hanging out with right there. So Julian's full of shit. We knew this, but that's just clear as day to me.
Scotty, happy to throw you the last word, my friend. That's pretty much what we've had to add to this conversation. We've, as you can see in the chat, we might not be able to see the chat, but we'll bring some more up. Everyone's been incredibly thankful that you've come on board tonight and had a bit of a chat. But why don't you wrap it up for us? What would you like to finish up with?
Oh man, what can I finish with? I mean, if he keeps meeting, get down there and show that you care, and show that by putting your body on the line when you need to.
There you go. If he comes back to Wellington, will you? I mean, you said you went to it because it was in your neighbourhood. If it was somewhere else in Wellington, would you still get yourself along to the next meetings? Is that something you're going to continue to do?
There's been a large crew of us who have gone to different ones. So there's there's a little bit of a network here through Christian Action Aotearoa, who have been making sure that people get along, and I guess particularly our kaupapa has been around responding non-violently.
Brilliant. Hey, Scotty, it's been so good for coming on. We've been saying this to people because, we're just a couple of buffheads from Dunedin, but thank you for trusting us. I know you had some reservations as to what you would do out there and what if it would be a net positive or a net negative. Hopefully it's a net positive for what you're doing and a net negative for what you're fighting against. But we appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, nice to talk to you both. See ya.
All right, thanks
again, Scotty.
Rev Scottie Reeve, who got thrown out of a Julian Batchelor meeting. And it doesn't sound like that's such a big thing, because it seems like lots of people are thrown out. But from the footage last week that helped us tell Victoria's story, that's the Reverend Scottie Reeve. Chewy, thoughts, if any? Chats, if any?
Chats, we've blasted through most of them, but Simon here says, hasn't Batchelor also had people from Action Zealandia involved as well? Yes, he has.
I believe, and I'll say I believe just for a bit of protection, but it seems pretty clear that the person who dragged Victoria Jacobs out of the event was Action Zealandia.
Mm-hmm. And Chris has been involved in them as well. So, yeah, there's definitely a shared interest, shall we say.
Do you know what I kind of wish? I just wish these people were just straight up. I mean, Julian Batchelor on some level may be a useful idiot to these white supremacists. I don't know what his beliefs are personally. He might just be a useful idiot, as it talks about. I think it's 1984 that talks about useful idiots, isn't it? And it just might be a means to the end for even more nefarious situations. I don't know. But I just wish they'd be honest. I mean, like if you read Action Zealandia stuff or you read National Front stuff, it's talking about, building a European New Zealand or a community for European New Zealanders. I read the other day that they don't even allow fat people in, Chewy. I was a bit disappointed about that, but
well, it's like Groucho Marx said, I don't want to be part of any club that wants me.
Yeah, would have me as a member. But if they would, people would. I mean, like, obviously, I don't respect their views, but I respect people more if they're just straight up. Like I used to do this on Talkback a lot. Like if we have a debate, and I can see how you've got to your position, even if I disagree, I'm happy to go. I see how you've got there. I don't agree, but I can understand how you got there. People who just use talking points or tropes or level one conversation, or they've heard it from somewhere else and they repeat it and they have nothing to back it up, I have no respect for. And also people who hide their intentions and hide their truth and use a back door to get to what they're trying to do, I have no respect for them either.
I've had some of the best discussions of my life with people that have views counter to my own, but they present their argument and they explain where they come from. And again, if you can see, you can empathize and you can understand it, and you can kind of reposition your argument. We've had a couple of people in the chat tonight that haven't come in for that, and that's fine. Like, unlike some traveling meetings, we're not going to kick you out, but maybe stay and listen, maybe exchange of views is good. I am going to, however, jump on just one of them. Trade Tech, new person in the chat today. Good evening. So he is accusing me of saying that Chris is guilty by association. If Chris was involved in the National Front and has been a pretty prominent white nationalist in the past, and people are saying that he's not now. If he is then associating with a Nazi wearing a visible neo-Nazi white supremacist dog whistle, signal, symbol, then that's not so much guilty by association as just being guilty. You're welcome to stick around, but that is my two pieces.
But if he's also talking about guilty by association to do with Julian Batchelor being associated with those people, look, I don't have any problems with the concept that Julian Batchelor didn't know that these people appear to be white supremacists in their meeting, but now he does. And his response to the Crypt Keeper was to say, oh yeah, I'd use him again. So you can't have that defense anymore of guilty by association, because you have, you now know. And like, it's, my friend's not a racist, he's a good guy.
Yeah, I don't care what your position is, but if someone points out, hey, this person that is supporting you is a Nazi, were you aware? Which has always been my sort of first approach. But we're not concerned about those views because he supports us on this other thing. That was my criticism of the parliamentary protesters as well when it was pointed out. Because it doesn't matter what they agree with you on. the core belief that they have is incompatible with anything.
Yeah.
You know, I would give someone who I disagreed with intensely, I would give them credit if when someone is identified as being a white nationalist or a straight up Nazi, they went, oh, okay, he's out of here.
Yeah.
Don't want anything to do with him ever again. That's it. I would give them credit. But they all seem to take this weird view of like, oh no, he's changed. He hasn't changed. He's standing there with a boot boy.
Yeah. Yeah. Olwen says Julian gets on the platform, he vomits live upon live. He's allowed to, but he knows that would not be the case on BMH. He's too much of a coward. But I don't. I mean, like, we're nobodies when it comes to. I mean, I'm not a journalist. Joey's not a journalist. We barely speak English, if we're honest.
Hey, I worded a very high language. I'm an excellent worder. My mum.
Me fail English? That's impossible. But I don't know. I've offered, and as I said, there'll be some people, and you know we've experienced this before, who won't be happy that I've offered, but I've offered, and he has every opportunity to come on. I don't think he will, but then again, I also think, like, I don't want to talk about this too much because, you know, numbers ebb and flow, but we've had a very good 2 or 3 months. You know, we've averaged sort of 10 to 12,000 video views a week at the moment. That's across all of our platforms. So we're not little like his meeting with 20 people. Now you come on here and we don't get tens of thousands for one video, but we get hundreds. We get 1,000. You know, it's not massive, but it's much bigger than a meeting with 47 people in it. It's not as big as, you know, going on TVNZ and getting 300,000 views. It's, you know, but it's something. But I don't think we'll probably see any of the political leaders. I don't think we'll see any of them. I don't think we'll see Julian Batchelor. Perhaps they've watched some of the commentary around, you know, what's his name, Hake or Chantel Baker, and they realise that we just ask questions, just honest questions, and, you know, answer them. And if you can't answer them, like, I mean, I still think all of these people who are on the right, I still think one of the questions that I would want to ask them constantly, and maybe me saying this is a silly thing because if any of them were to see it, or let's say one of their 7 layers down social media people who gets forced to watch the complete trash that we're putting out their season, and they report this back to them, then they'll never come on. But so be it. It's like, how do you feel? How do you justify? How do you process the idea, Julian, for example, that you have Nazis, white supremacists in that meeting supporting your views? How do you feel, Christopher Luxon, that you have a massive amount of racists that are going to vote for you and are supporting a lot of what you say, and that you need their vote? And we can bring up the Joe Hawke post just to demonstrate that as an absolute truth. So, like I said, maybe it's silly for me to say that publicly because if any of them do pick up on it, they won't come on. But it's like, but that's actually a real question. Maybe all we can hope, Chewy, is some fucking journalist watches this one day and they steal our question, and at least it does get asked of these people, because it needs to be asked. We've been saying this for 12 to 18 months. These are Luxon's dilemmas. You know, some of the worst people in society, you need them to vote for you. I'm not saying that means everyone who votes National is the worst people, but how do you get their vote whilst distancing yourself from their abhorrent views? I mean, ACT seems to be okay with not distancing themselves at the moment. That's the choice they've made. National seems to need to also distance themselves. You don't want to
alienate your base.
Yeah, it's true. But, you know, I made that offer to Mr. Batchelor in good faith, and it's still there, but when I made it, I didn't think he'd come on, and I don't think he will. And it either means we're not worth his time. I don't think that's the case because we have an audience. So what does Occam's razor say? Maybe he's concerned. He's concerned that someone's going to ask him a question that he has to answer, as opposed to, you know, sticking their nose firmly up his asshole like what happens on the platform.
The reason he won't come on, Pat, is because he has a weak argument that will come apart like toilet paper in the rain. That's why.
Yeah. Yep. All right. You want to share something there, or is that for later on? I just saw you pull up your screen down there.
That's for later on. That's my tangent. I'm just pre-tangenting.
Let's. Is that like before you go out on Friday night, you do a pre-tangent so you don't get distracted too much on the Friday night at the pub?
Preload your tangents. You have them locked and ready to go with a conversation. You go. What's a good tangent? Have you seen what an echidna's penis looks like? And then you pass your phone around. That's a good tangent. I'm not going to do that. That's not what I've queued up.
Why can I not get my screen? Have you stolen my? Oh, there it goes. Gosh, that took forever to pop up on my end.
What are you talking about?
All right. Let's have a look at this, Labour list. I think this is interesting. And then we're going to wrap up the show. And I know that Planner Walk's given us a super chat. We thank you for that, Planner Walk. We are definitely going to be talking about what you've done. So just so you know, we'll bring up your super chat when we talk about that, which will be the last story of the night. Silver Fox talking a little bit with his co-host. Sorry, I don't mean to sound patronising there. I just don't know the name of the co-host. About the Labour list released today.
Well, Labour has unveiled its party list for the upcoming election, and with it came a strong message to two former ministers.
Michael Wood and Phil Twyford tumbled down the rankings.
No, that's not a strong message. Sorry to cut in already, because they're going to win their electorate rolls. What it is, it's the Labour Party being able to say, these have been naughty boys, so we're distancing themselves, but they're going to be there because they're going to win their seats. So it's kind of the Labour Party sort of looking for their out while still being able to rely on those two people in Parliament next year.
Meaning they'll need to retain their electorate seats to make it back into Parliament. Political editor Jenna Lynch has the details.
Pitched up in front of his big red banner and pitching to you.
This election is fundamentally about who best has New Zealanders' backs in tough times.
Relying on Labour's record to define the election, urging voters to think of them in times of national crises rather than the political crises that have dominated their attention of late, hoping he can do a 180.
We're in this to win it. We're going to be significantly increasing our share of the party vote to what you're seeing based on current polls. Our campaign's only just warming up.
Interesting that they would acknowledge the polls, Chewy, because most political parties go, the only poll that matters is election day, but he's actually saying polling's not that crash hot, it's going to be better. I don't know if that's a good or a negative, just interesting to notice the political leader actually doing it.
This target for MPs is
Yeah, well, they can't, but every party normally does, no matter what it says. But it's just, like I said, I don't know whether that's a positive or a negative. I kind of go, good on. I mean, I think it's silly to go, oh, no, they're fine when they're bad. So I guess it's I think it's a good thing. But it's just an interesting observation, that's all.
The secret, instead stating the bleeding obvious.
Our goal is to get as many votes.
Can I just say as well, Jenna Lynch, the verbiage that she uses, the bleeding obvious, patronising much?
Instead stating the bleeding obvious.
Our goal is to get as many votes as possible so we get as many people in Parliament as possible.
How many MPs do you think you're going to have after the election?
Heaps.
They've drawn up a list 76 long. Cabinet ministers come first, the rest of Labour's largest ever caucus scrapping it out to keep their seats.
We're bolstering an experienced caucus with fresh new talent.
New talent like Georgie Danzy, who unsuccessfully ran for them in the Hamilton West by-election, triggered by Rebel MP Gaurav Sharma. A hospital pass like no other, rewarded with a ranking ahead of 20 sitting MPs.
I think Georgie flew the flag for us very proudly and very positively.
Below her, former Transport Minister Phil Twyford taking the largest tumble. He was ranked 4 in 2020. He's now 49.
Do you want him to go?
No.
And Michael Wood, his shares scandal fall from grace has landed him with no ministerial job and a 22-place plummet.
How can that be seen as anything other than a message that he's not welcome?
I think Michael's not currently a minister, and so his ranking on the list reflects that.
A surprise unresignation from Tamati Coffee yesterday saw him selected for Kitty Allen's vacated East Coast nomination after saying he wanted to spend more energy on his young family.
The tank is certainly not empty.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, Chewy. We can talk about that at the end, but someone who retires and who comes out of retirement and moves to an area that they're not a part of to bid for a seat. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about
tough
it.
One.
We'll talk about it.
He's running on all cylinders.
And so is the PM.
I'm confident that our party vote is going to exceed expectations.
Fired up to take everyone by surprise.
There you go. That'll do. We don't need commentary from Jenna Lynch because I've got also some the actual list here as well. A couple of the big ones. You can see there's a lot of people down. So these people are all holding their spaces. Up from 18. Willow Jean Prime in Northland, and then down up from 24, down, 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 up from 23, that's kind of basically the same, down, 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 up from 25, basically the same, basically the same, basically the same. So there's Georgie. Now, they were polling, the way they're polling at the moment, I should probably go to the side, shouldn't I? Because you may not be able to see all the things that I'm saying. Oh, sorry, dude. What am I trying to do, Chewy? I'm trying to take all the limelight. There we go. Lots of people down, lots of people down. And then you go down to 49, Phil Twyford. Now, actually, he was 32. I mean, you think Phil Twyford's been around forever. When they said he's at 49, I was like, I would have thought it was a drop of like 40, but it's actually not that. It's not that big a drop. And Michael Wood from 30 to 45 is still, percentage-wise, not that big a drop. But this is the area, kind of 40 through 50, that are in danger, right? Because based on current polling, and all the new candidates are all down here. You can see they've got new candidate beside them, sort of 54 and beyond. None of them will be a part of there, and a few people who are going for electorate only, including Nanai Mahuta. So yeah, I don't know. There's too much to talk about there. I mean, Tamati Coffee is interesting. The two people who have been dropped significantly, which is Wood and Twyford, will win their seats. They're in Labour strongholds. Thoughts on the list, Chewy?
Yeah, like the Tamati Coffee thing is interesting. To have someone that had his foot out the door and then deciding to reverse course and then come in. I think that the East Coast is like they've gone through the ringer, and I would think that they would want someone passionately local.
Yeah.
Cuddy Allen was very, very well regarded over there. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to go down.
Maybe because of what's happened with all the cyclones and stuff recently, maybe what they actually should have had in need is an MP that's just a local MP, like not a minister, not with responsibilities, because actually, like you say, if they have some, and maybe they'll have the opportunity to do that next year because they'll have no ministers from Labour, maybe, and someone just focusing on the East Coast. I mean, Tamati Coffee, I think last time went for Bay of Plenty. I'm assuming that's where he lives. So then he moves to a different region to be an MP for, I don't know if his iwi is connected to that area, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I sort of agreed with a bit of what you're saying, which feels like you're saying a less high profile, passionate local would be better than a higher profile import. A carpetbagger is what the Americans call it. Someone from a different region coming in.
Well, I mean, I know, like Ingrid Leary down here, the Tairi electorate, she copped a lot of flack coming down into the area because it's seen as a safe Labour seat.
Yeah.
And she's not from the area and that sort of thing. I saw that as quite a knee-jerk reaction at the time because she had time to get to know the electorate and the kids are in schools down here and she's been a very passionate advocate for issues in the area. But she had time to get her feet under her.
Yeah.
Tamati Coffee's parachuting into an area that is hurting and I think desperately needs like a strong voice in government.
A bunch of people are saying he's over there, though. I mean, the northern half of East Coast electorate is in the Bay of Plenty. Tamati has roots on his grandmother's side there, so he may not. He may not be local.
Believe me, I'm happy to be wrong.
Yeah. But still, he's not. He's still not a local. I mean, like I'm not criticizing here. It's a bit like me saying it was interesting that, Chris Hipkins acknowledged the polls. I'm saying it's an interesting choice. I don't know whether it's a positive or a negative. We could have a look, actually. Maybe I will have a look when we get into the next story about what the results were on the East Coast. Because if it's like a safe Labour seat, which I suspect it probably is, it probably doesn't matter who you put up there.
I think the other interesting thing here, whenever I look at the list, is the promotion of new talent. Because one of the criticisms that I have of Labour is their over-reliance on a handful of key ministers to basically fight fires and move from portfolio to portfolio.
Yeah.
Just when there's, did it. Woodhouse did it, that sort of thing. We're just going to point a bigger name at this that has suddenly become a problem. and you just end up with this front bench that is not going anywhere, and there's no new passionate talent with new ideas coming through. So, I mean, I look at a refresh of a list, let's bring some new talent through. I think, if you think back to Helen Clark's Labour government, she effectively stopped a lot of people coming up, anybody that would think to challenge her, I guess. And that gutted the Labour Party for a couple of terms.
The seat was won handsomely in 2020, but I think, as we all know, 2020 is an anomaly. Well, look, Jacinda, you try to get rid of her. She just pops up, Chewy. She pops up everywhere. Like won by 10,000 votes handily. 50% of the vote went to Kerry Allen. However, the election before that won by Ann Tolley with a 3,000 vote majority. So I guess what that means is it's not a slam dunk. If you looked at the last results, you think it's a safe Labour seat, but then the 2014 won by Ann Tolley by 9,000 votes. Ann Tolley. So it's actually been a safe national
That really
seat.
Surprises me. I didn't know that.
National. So actually back to it's 1890, back to 1999, it's been, oh no, this is Labour, sorry. Labour 99, Labour 2002, National 2005, National 2008, National 2011 and 2014 and 2017. So of the past 20 years, it's been a national seat. So yeah, not a safe Labour seat from the looks of that. Interesting. I think that the list is meh. It's not amazingly exciting. It's not terribly bad. None of the also there's a bunch of people who are retiring and stuff as well, who are dropped off the list, bringing some people up. And I think it is what it is. It's not exciting. It's not bad. It's meh. But then I think most lists sort of are. They give sort of priority to experience, or else if they want to make a point like they have with Michael Wood, they drop him down the list, but he's going to win a seat. I mean, if he wasn't in a safe seat, maybe he wouldn't have dropped down the list so much. I don't know. Sliding doors.
I gotta be honest, I'm surprised he's still there.
Hard though, bro. I mean, you think about it, you're on, a couple of $100K a year, and that's your job and your income. I'm not saying that's the right reason to be a politician, but you don't just walk out of that job and straight into another job. I mean, if you're the Prime Minister or the Deputy Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance, I'm sure they're all fine. But if you're an MP or a basic minister, and if you go out in disgrace, I don't know how. I know this sounds really calculated. I'm not trying to be too capitalistic here. I'm just being a realist. That I've heard stories of MPs that, because I think they get paid till the end of the year after an election if they've lost, who have been driving taxis the following January sort of thing. So it must be hard. I'm purely from an employment point of view.
I know he's got a rep of being a very capable minister. I said it, when he was going through all of his troubles. But it's just like his troubles were such a hit on his, either his integrity or B, his capability to remember emails that people have been sending him and phone calls with very clear instructions on what to do. So, yeah.
Alrighty, let's keep moving. Thank you, Gareth, for your super chat. We appreciate it. Any time people want to do super chats, make sure if you send us the super chat though, because other than if it's a comment that we can't show because you're a vile person trying to say a vile thing, we always show super chat. So if you're going to send through a super chat, make sure you ask a question or make a comment, because it's one of the ways to guarantee to get yours to show up there. So thank you, Gareth. Appreciate the super chat, even though you didn't do a question. And Plan a Walk for a super chat, $2 super chat. Ahoy, hoy, have you seen National Can't Count? We have, and we're about to get to that right now. So thank you for your super chat, Plan a Walk. All the best. And you and I have to talk shortly about my camera at some stage soon. And we need to catch up, Plan a Walk. All right, let's have a look at this, because this is the latest release by National over the weekend. 13 new roads of national significance. Apparently
by latest you mean 2010, right?
Well, obviously it's worked for them. I guess it's a little bit like if the All Blacks play this weekend and they play MIB back, the Men in Black song. It's an old song, but people still enjoy it and still associate it with something. I guess they've done their research, haven't they? And this has resonated with them. This came out yesterday, but there's been more reporting on it today. Just so you're clear. This is from the Herald yesterday. Luxon's claims on prices for infrastructure and official figures obtained by One News demonstrate that National's expense estimates are far too low. For example, National estimates the cost of the Walkwood to Wellsford is $2.2 billion, but officials suggest it might cost up to $4 billion. According to One News, the Greens said this kind of money should be spent on public transportation. Luxon said even electric vehicles require adequate roads. Others, such as Transport New Zealand, told One News they support the initiative, claiming more road investment makes them safer while also boosting the economy. Now, I have a foot in each camp here because I think that we need better roads and I think we need better public transport. So it does feel a little bit like a fence at the top of the cliff, ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. I think massive infrastructure investment into roading without public transport is short-sighted, but equally only investment into public transport and leaving the infrastructure is not going to be useful either. But there's ways to do this, which we shall talk about now. Chewie, do you want to jump in before I play anything about what I've just said?
Yes, otherwise I'll burst. Look, it's old thinking, and it's fudged numbers that they must have known were going to get torn apart instantly. I noticed one of the Auckland councillors sort of going, I noticed National were going to fund this big road that's been planned for $1.3 billion, which is way under cost. And then he looked into it and it was funding a third of it.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing. The part of this announcement was that they're going to completely shit can Let's Get Wellington moving, which there's been an enormous amount of consultation, an enormous amount of money spent. It was going to be a full network redo of how Wellingtonians can travel around their city. And they've gone, cool, out the door, 4 lanes to the airport, new tunnel. And everything else gets scrapped. It's just, and there's been so much talk about the climate change, all of that sort of stuff. No, more roads. More roads. We'll get rid of EV. We'll get rid of EV subsidies. We'll get rid of public transport. It's just more lanes, more lanes, more lanes. When all the evidence is, if you want to solve congestion, you provide different modes of transport.
Yeah.
And not more lanes. Because you build more lanes, they fill up.
And this, unfortunately, I think Brooke Van Velden's probably quite smart, and she writes well, but I don't think she communicates very well in the spoken word. We're about to watch a bit of a clip, and she basically says, and there is a quote in here, I put it out on my Twitter today, the best thing we can do if we want to talk about the climate crisis, the quote is if you want to talk about the climate crisis, is to ease congestion by building more roads. This is what Brooke Van Velden said today. Ease congestion by building more roads. Now, I think what she's meaning is congestion as in cars not moving, but that doesn't necessarily change the situation with climate change. So she words hard, sometimes live speak, which I understand. But
do you want to know how you solve congestion? You put a couple of hundred people in light rail every 15 minutes.
Yeah, actually, I should have brought it up. There was quite a good tweet by the Greens today. In fact, let me start playing this. Unless I can find it super quick. Let me start playing this video clip. There's a very good little, here it is here. Let me bring it up and bring it across and put it just there. When I say very good, I mean messaging. People can choose to agree or disagree. I don't care. There's the tweet from the Greens today. Nat's transport policy would create more congestion, hurt commuters, and drive emissions through the roof. This is what it stated in October. 50 people on the road with National's plan. There we go. 50 people on the road with the Greens plan.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, all right, let's get to this conversation. It's from breakfast this morning, so there's been more information come out since then. This was the first kind of response, public commentary, because this policy was released yesterday. Brooke Van Velden and Chewie's Queen on this on the couch.
4 lanes from Whangarei to Tauranga. That's National's newest...
Which is not actually the plan. They talked about that, but it's not. It's actually not what they're planning on doing.
$6 billion...
As they say, Chewie, they're walking it back the day after. That seems to be the practice.
Election promise is revealed on One News last night. There's more details to come out today, but what we do know so far is being called ambitious in timeline and scale. With us now for their takers, Green Party MP Chloe Swarbrick and ACT Deputy Leader Brooke Van Velden. Morena.
Morena. Good morning.
Our roads are a shambles, Chloe. We hear about this from people all the time. So is this just a case of us needing to play catch up here?
We definitely do need to play catch up when it comes to the infrastructural deficit in this country. We know that based on, I believe it was either the Productivity Commission or the Infrastructure Commission who...
Sorry, just can we acknowledge again? when Chloe just cites research like that. I just want to acknowledge it rather than opinion.
Looked back at the last 30 years and have found that we have approximately $100 billion deficit in the infrastructure that we need to be moving forward as a country. However, I would say that we also are confronted by a climate crisis, and you're not actually going to deal with the issues of induced congestion, that is more people needing to use cars in order to get around, if you continue to provide them with the only option of using a car to get around. And this is why it's really gutting to see that there hasn't been some kind of more meaningful commitment to, for example, interregional rail, which the Transport Select Committee in Parliament issued a report on just a few months ago.
And remember, this is the deputy leader about to come up of the ACT party. This is the deputy leader saying that one of the answers to the climate issues is building more roads. The deputy leader, should they be in government next year, she'll probably be, Seymour could easily be deputy prime minister and she'll be basically running ACT.
Okay, the fact remains, Brooke, we do use our roads and we need them to be of a decent standard. Is $6 billion even enough to actually deal with, as Chloe says, this massive deficit that we're dealing with in infrastructure?
Well, absolutely, we do need investment in more roads, because you're absolutely right. People do use them. It's good for people just getting around the country and also tradespeople and getting goods to the different ports and around the country. So there's a huge need for more roads.
What roads do.
But you're right. I'm also worried about just $6 billion, and maybe there'll be a cost blowout, and putting aside $6 billion now would mean $16 billion in 2 years or 3 years.
Maybe.
And that's why the ACT Party says, yes, let's have more roads, but also we've allowed for toll roads and public-private partnerships to help find the capital and funding to raise these roads and make more of these investments.
The solution is definitely not privatising what should be public infrastructure, because we know that when you have a middleman clipping the ticket and have to make profit, well, guess what? It costs more in the long run for all of us who are using those goods or services. But again, I have to say that this is an announcement that is coming in the context of the climate crisis. We have to, and we can actually develop in line with other countries internationally that have, for example, interregional rail. To Brooke's point around, for example, trucks on our roads, we can be getting more of those trucks off of our roads for investing meaningfully in our rail. That results in freight lines all around the rest of the country. We know that Kiwi Rail is in a bit of a shambles. There's a lot of work that still has to be done there.
Look, the best thing that we could do, if you're wanting to talk about the climate crisis, is make sure that we ease congestion. There's a lot of emissions polluted by having congestion. If we had more roads, more ability to move around, you'd have less congestion and less emissions from people sitting in traffic idling. It would actually get our streets moving, but also would make our streets safer for people too. When we invest in more highways and in things like toll roads, they've actually been proved to make our roads safer for people to get around.
There is a literal concept known as induced congestion, which is in town planning, where you build roads such that the only way that people can get around is by using cars. You create car dependency. Right now, we have had successive governments, both locally and centrally, who have not invested in transport options meaningfully. So that's what we need to move away from, inducing that congestion in the first place.
Absolutely.
Yes. There we go. That's where we're going to leave that, because we've got other stuff to talk about. And look, there's another clip I'm going to play. I'm not stopping the conversation, and I'm actually going to scroll a bit forward, because, to be honest, I'm
going to paraphrase a little bit here, but Mike Hoskins was talking about this, right, is that, of course, we need new roads because the public transport system in this country is a fucking shambles. And he's so close to working it out. I just kind of want to be there to go, and what could we do? We could fund public transport and make sure that it fucking works.
Yeah.
But it's that whole thing. It's the same thing that happens with the health system, right? People turn around and go, well, public transport doesn't work, so let's take even more money out of it and put it into roads, because I want to be able to get to work and I can rely on a road.
Yeah.
But, when Chloe's talking about induced congestion, I can show you an example.
Go.
Cairo had a congestion problem. Oh, sorry, Alexandria. So they built a lovely new big highway, and then that happened.
Yeah, over time. Expanded population.
Instantly. That's like I think a month after it opened.
Oh.
So it instantly filled up and got congestion. So if Brooke's serious about not wanting, to preserve the
hang on, bro, hang on. That I just have to stop you at the first part of the sentence. If Brooke's serious, like, do you need to continue? I'm sorry. Do you need to continue on?
No, she's not serious. You can't protect the environment and stop climate change by adding 4 more lanes.
I haven't queued this up properly, so I might not be quite in the right spot. But one of the more important, interesting parts on 3 News tonight was when it was revealed where National's numbers have come from to do their costings, and their numbers have come from the government.
Oh, okay.
No,
Sorry.
So the numbers have come from the government, yet when the government tells them the numbers are wrong, Luxon says, no, our numbers are right. Can you see a map? Because I can't see it in my screen.
I cannot see a map, no.
Yeah, this happened before. See, something's a little bit going on here. I'm going to try one more time. I go there. Oh, there we go. I don't know why it's popping up like that, but there we go. So this might not be quite the right spot, but I just want to play this one bit. So in other words, the government has done the numbers. It's revealed that National has got their numbers for their policy from the government's numbers. The government has said your numbers are wrong. National is saying, no, they're right. So they're saying that the government's numbers are right, even though the government say, no, they've been updated. This is them not costing again.
Us. South Island roads are actually in pretty good shape, and the congestion impacts down there are less.
Justin Ty Umbers represents thousands of truckies.
I wanted to play this as well, actually, because there's an element of this was if it's about the truckies and business, then they need to pay for it. So this is where you put on road user charges massively for things like diesel and for things like maybe you don't do it at the pump for a SUV, but the big places, the truck stops and stuff. If it's the truck companies that want it, then it's the truck companies that pay for it.
Says National's plan will be a godsend for productivity.
Because the roading network's in such poor shape, we're losing millions of dollars every day because of detours, road closures, and driver shortage.
But it won't come cheap. The package has a price tag of $26 billion.
This is the most transparent, upfront costings you've ever seen from an opposition party.
Not if you ask Transport Minister David Parker. He says there's a $2.8 billion pothole in just 4 of the projects he's looked at.
I won't take any lectures from David Parker or this government on our costings.
They should be asked where the money's coming from.
Or we open up access to new financing tools, and it might well mean, as we see with tolls, as we've seen with value capture, as we've seen with targeted rates, things that we can do in order to get that infrastructure built quicker and also not put that burden on the taxpayer of New Zealand. So we are open up for everything.
Okay, real quick. We are open up for everything actually means we don't know how we're paying for it. Because what he's saying is we are open up for everything. It's really important, right? This is important for real journalists to get their head around. Luxon saying we are open up for everything means, yeah, we'll find a way to pay for them. So, not costed. No one understands how this is going to be paid for.
Money tree.
Yeah. Well, we'll just finish this first and then we'll get into it.
Celebrating the return of roads of national significance with a selfie of national politicians.
Well, Lloyd joins us now. Kia ora, Lloyd. So did National undercook how much it would cost to build some of these roads?
Yeah, well, the government's certainly saying that, as you heard there from David Parker. But here's a spanner, Mike. National's actually saying that the figures that they used in their costings actually came from David Parker's office in a parliamentary written question from 3 weeks ago. And they're right. I've had a look at it, and that's the information that they got from David Parker. But looking at it, it's actually from 2021. So the figure they got was from 2021. David Parker came out today and said, well, actually, I've gone to Waka Kotahi and we've revised it up. It's no longer $721 million like I told you 3 weeks ago. It could be as high as $2 billion, so a significant increase there, more than doubling of the cost that he set them. A lot of squabbling today over the battle of the billions.
It's not really squabbling because it's like me saying to you, Chewy, how much is that quote to get your house painted? And you say, oh, it's 10 grand to get the house painted. And then I come back to you in 3 weeks' time and I say, oh, look, Chewy's house costs 10 grand to get painted. And you go, oh, no, actually, I've been updated. It's now $13,000. And me trying to argue that, no, it's $10,000. Because actually, you know the numbers and they've changed. The government knows the numbers and they've changed. And Luxon's trying to sell the idea that his numbers are right by saying the numbers that the government had in 2021 are what we're using and they're correct. But they're not, according to the government. Your mic's off, bro. Sorry to be a bearer of bad tidings.
Sorry, it's because my dog was barking. It's just, again, one of our major political parties just punching itself in the face rather than doing the goddamn job. Like, Luxon's saying, "Oh, we'll find the money for this through magnificent savings or whatever." We know what it'll be. It'll be the public-private partnerships that they loved so much and did such a shit job of Transmission Gully. The costs blew out. The road was shit. And it's all for these trucking firms. They do not want more freight on rail, and they want to privatize their profits and socialize their losses. They don't want to pay for the roads.
Well,
the damage to a road done by a truck is an order of 100 times what a private car will do to it. You could build a road and just run private cars on it. They'll never need fixing. You put a truck on it, you're patching it every 6 months.
Yeah. So I will say one thing, right? I'm not anti-tolls, right? If they're done in quite a specific way. I'm a very, very, very old person. I can just remember tolls on Auckland's Harbour Bridge. And at the northern side, this is this picture here, and the northern side of Auckland's Harbour Bridge, there used to be toll gates you'd have to drive through. And once the bridge was paid for, Chewy, they went away. I'm not against that idea. I saw another photo here that I wanted to show you. Check this out. How's that for building the Harbour Bridge? Part of the bridge
you
going
have to
on.
get quite a bit of speed up to make that jump.
That's pretty dope, eh? The other thing is, I lived in Tauranga for a little while. Tauranga had tolls on the bridge, and then once it was paid for, the tolls went away.
Yep.
Right
Littleton
now,
Tunnel is another one.
Right now, I think this is Puhoi. This is north of Auckland. This is actually heading south. This road here, if you're watching, that road there goes up through Windy Ridge and over to Orewa. You don't have to go through the tolls. Now, this is an important part. But if you go through the tunnel, there's a toll. I'm assuming once that's paid for, it will go away. There is one little criteria for tolls, though, right? And the criteria is this: there has to be an alternate way. You can't put tolls on a road if it's the only way. So see the map here? The black road there is the new road that was built, and this is the old road we used to go to Northland. You can still go down that road if you don't want to pay the $1 or $2 or $3 or whatever it is. So you have an alternative route. I'm not anti the idea of tolls, not PPP, but government tolls, the government paying for it and then getting the money back in tolls. And then once it's paid for, the tolls go away. It's been used a lot. I don't think that's a terrible idea. I don't think, though, with the PPP, for example, you want to set up a system where we're paying for a road for the next 100 years because it's privately owned. And once it's paid for after 30 years, it then keeps getting paid for the following 70 years.
I can solve this, Pat.
Nationalise. Sorry.
Bring back the Ministry of Works. Yeah. No, it's just more tired, old thinking. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of them. We don't have the population, or our geography is too challenging. There is an answer to that in every modern country in the world that has a spread out population. It has a similar population to us. That has similar geography to us. They all have public transport by rail that fucking works.
Yeah.
I want more choice than a highway drive or an expensive air ticket.
One of the problems is our current, and I'm not saying this to be a negative Nancy, sorry Nancy, but one of our problems is our current infrastructure, and it's always difficult to fit that new infrastructure inside other infrastructure. I think at the moment you can't catch a train from Dunedin to Christchurch. I don't think that exists.
I took one of the last ones actually.
That would be brilliant. I mean, I had friends come down for my birthday on Friday from Dunedin. From Christchurch to Dunedin. If they could have jumped on a train and come down, probably, even if it was $25 each way or $50 each way, it probably would have cost less than fuel. They didn't drive their car when they were down here once. I took them everywhere because they were friends and we had a look around the place. I love the idea of rail, but good rail. The problem is, and this is always going to be the problem, a massive amount of investment needs to put in public transport. So in Dunedin, where there's 125-ish thousand people, proper public transport cannot be paid for by the user. unless you're paying $40 a ticket to catch a bus. So it has to be subsidised. It has to be paid for by the government. National is not going to be the government to do that, which means Labor's got to do it. Labor Green government has to do it. And then they have to put something in place that it stays. So that's why I said I like the idea of fixing our roads, but only if it goes hand in hand with fixing our public transport as well. But you've now just doubled the bill, Chewy, and that's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is... Every Monday we come on and National's done something. We haven't even spoken about what they've talked about sexual health learning in schools, which we're going to have to do that tomorrow, aren't we?
We are,
because we're in our third half hour of our hour-long show. Like I'm going to go as far as say National's policies, as they stand now, are dangerous.
Mm.
They are dangerous because they haven't funded them. They are dangerous for the long-term effects that they are going to have on this country if they are successful. There are so much unknown. You know, they want to increase funding for a whole bunch of stuff, but not increase tax.
Yeah, and reduce the tax take.
But also not borrow, apparently.
Well, so they say.
So some of that is lies, if not all of it.
Well, no, or all businesses paying for what they're wanting to do, and then you've got PPPs. That's the other way they could do it.
I mean, if they came on and they said, hey, look, we want to do roads of national significance, fucking 8 lanes everywhere you want to go, and we're going to fund it by taxing the wealthy, and here's the numbers, like a couple of other support parties have managed to do, then I would go, oh, okay, well, you seem to have done your homework. But this is Pat, you know what? I'm going to buy you a whole new studio kit out because your camera's shit.
Thanks.
I don't have the money, but just trust me. I'm going to do it somehow.
We're open to all possibilities. We're open to all possibilities to pay for it.
Which means I'm going to ram raid a camera shop. So, you know, I just want these guys to get their fucking shit together, whatever side of the aisle they're on.
Yeah.
And at the moment, there just seems to be 2 parties doing that.
Yeah.
And neither of them are the majors. And
All
none
right.
of them are on the right.
All right,
it's
sir.
not a good combo.
Let's say huge thanks to our patrons. Remember, if you want to be a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Also, thanks for the super chats tonight for you guys who fire them through. They are genuinely useful. We appreciate them a lot. As we say, I might have to buy another camera. This one cost me $1,700, so who knows? But also remember, you can support us. I got someone messaging me today from a media outlet saying, "Hey, someone's been telling us about you." So we've got some advocates out there.
That.
Yeah, they've got some advocates out there who are telling people about us, like from I won't say who it is, but like a real media agency like a Stuff or a Herald or a ZB or something, saying that someone's out there or people are out there, you know, telling media agencies about us. So yeah, cool. That's another way you can be our advocates. You can download our podcast, you can share our podcast around, you can share our clips around. And you can be our advocate and tell people about us. And also you can get the merch, which will be coming up in a week or so, a couple of weeks' time. And also you can be a patron. All of those things are ways that help us. And genuinely, without trying to put the head out too much about money, like probably one of the best ways you can help us is to also tell people about us. #share our shit. Tell people, share our stuff, tell people about what we're doing. And yeah. So we appreciate you. If that's one person or 10 people out there currently trying to farm us off to some groups, then good on you. Go for it. See what you can do.
Right, Pat, it's tangent time.
Oh,
I've been
okay.
ever so patient.
6 minutes and 20 seconds, bro.
My favourite story. You'll love this because it's sport related, right?
I bet I know what it is. I know what it is. I already know.
The Spanish football team ran away from Palmerston North because it was too boring.
And see more.
North is an image problem.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to be known nationally as a boring town. So who do you get to spruik the wonderful details about your town? New Zealand's least boring man.
Yeah.
Who would that be?
Rob Muldoon.
Close. So close.
Yeah,
David Seymour. So what's David Seymour got to say about wonderful wonderful Palmerston North.
Well, hola and welcome to the Square,
Hola.
the epicentre of one of New Zealand's greatest cities, Palmerston North, my own birthplace, and a place where, disgracefully, the Spanish football team have said it's too boring to stay and actually left. Well, I can tell you, Palmerston North is anything but boring.
Well, that
just
feels
a moment ago, I was talking to a gentleman
Just
reading
a
a book
moment
here
ago.
in the Square, and that book was about processed cheese. I inquired why was he doing this in the Square on a Sunday. Turns out he worked for Fonterra, even something that...
I wonder how many times the young people who were filming it went, no, it's hola, and he got hola. I wonder how many times they practiced it.
Was it Ola or Hola?
I think it was hola.
Either way is terrible because he's...
Oh, no, it might have been hola because it's Spanish.
Yeah, right.
¿Qué tal? Hola?
But it
Yeah,
didn't
I
sound
thought he
like,
was saying hola.
Hola, I'm in Palmy.
Yeah, no. Hola.
First
Yeah, it
of
was
all,
hola, of course.
Trying to rehab Palmy's reputation by admitting that you got born there. That's not helpful straight
Apparently
out the gate.
1,000 people moved out once they heard that.
And then your whole anecdote is about a guy reading a book about cheese. I hope the Spanish football team comes back and firebombs the place.
I think, I mean, like, you know my personal opinion about his politics, but I think he was trying to be funny about the cheese. I mean, you know, maybe it didn't land, but I think
I'm
that's
not
what he
willing
was
to
doing.
give him that.
Oh,
No,
come on.
He's guilty by association.
All right, team. Thank you for being with us tonight. Appreciate it. If people are asking for that clip tonight with clip tomorrow with Scotty, we'll definitely be putting that up. We'll probably put it up in short form on Twitter. So what we do typically is, when we say we, what we mean is me, just quietly, is we put up, if the clip is under 10 minutes, it typically goes on Twitter. If it's over 10 minutes, it typically goes on YouTube. So if you're not following us on Twitter, me and Chewy, make sure you do, because you'll get a bunch of clips. Like we probably had 8 or 10 clips from the conversation with Victoria and Hannah last week go up on Twitter, and maybe 1 or 2 go up on YouTube. So follow us on Twitter. It's a good way you'll get those clips to share around. I am looking to maybe join Mastodon at some stage and trying to get some more clips out there, but there's just not enough hours in the day. So
No defenders for Palmy. That's fine.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Lovely to be with you. Be safe. My first day at the gym tomorrow, Chewy. We're going to the gym to work on Pilates to try and get my broken back fixed after my 65 kilo weight loss in the last 15 months. Tomorrow is the first day of the gym. So if I'm here tomorrow night, I might be sitting like this and not moving too much. But we'll let you know tomorrow night.
The embarrassment, Pat, you're mispronouncing it. I think it's actually pronounced Gime.
Gime, off to the Gime.
Gime. Yeah.
There's those people who work in the medical department, the Gime department. Is that right? The
Gymologists.
The gymnologists. They're the ones who study gyms, I think.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Yes, absolutely. We're both correct.
All right, team. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9.
See you tomorrow
Be safe.
night.
Come tomorrow night. Bring a
Bye,
friend. See you then. Hooroo.